I am Makin Lee. Welcome to Makin Stuff, a podcast where I talk to your favorite queer artists about craft, creativity, and why making queer stuff matters. Today, I am so excited to have an award winning, best selling author of 22 Sapphic romance novels, an innovator looking to define the cutting edge of what's next in Sapphic romance, and a person who makes everyone around her a little bit better. Bryce Oakley. Welcome to Making Stuff.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me,
Oh my
Megan.
gosh, I am so thrilled. I'm so excited about this.
Me too.
In my original podcast, you were one of my dream guests, but you weren't when I was recording it. You really were because I love your stuff. I've always loved your stuff, but you weren't at the
Aw.
time doing a bunch of stuff because you had just had a kid and were surviving. So now, as I'm starting this, I'm so excited that you agreed to do this.
Well, I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Bryce, in your own words, why don't you tell people a little bit about who you are?
Well, hello. I'm Bryce. I am a Sapphic contemporary author. Well, Sapphic contemporary romance author, specifically romance, not specifically contemporary. I just put out my very first fantasy slash paranormal book. So kicking the doors of genre right open. I published my first novel in 2019, and 22 novels later, I'm still here. I'm still doing it. And yeah,
The
that's where we're at.
Bananas.
I agree. I don't know why I did that. I don't know how I did that.
It's so good, so good. And you started out of the gate really good, which is bonkers.
Well, thank you.
So I've had the privilege of reading a lot about Bryce lately, and she doesn't do enough interviews, I would say, for me to have solid material, but I do have some. Is it true that you wrote your first sapphic novel because your wife basically dared you?
Yes. Oh, completely.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fantasy lover and I love reading fantasy. I started writing my very first novel was actually Most Wonderful. And I wrote it kind of in a surge of like, I'm not feeling inspired by the literary fiction, the very serious literary fiction that I'm
Mhm.
writing. So I wrote that. I set it aside, kind of just got it out of my system. And then I started writing this fantasy series, but it was with like a male-female romance
Mhm.
pairing
Yeah.
because I thought that's the only thing people will read. That's the only thing people want to read was reading sapphic fiction. I loved sapphic fiction, but I kind of thought, if I want this to be a career, maybe I have to change myself.
Mhm.
So I started writing this series, and my wife was like, it's good, but what the fuck? Like, what are you doing? I enjoy it, but like, you're a lesbian. Why aren't you writing about lesbians? And I was like, well, I don't really think that like there's enough of an audience. I don't see how I could like make a living off of that. My entire goal in life has always been to be a full-time author. And I thought that that was the only way forward. She said, just write something and see how it does. Just like it's low stakes, you
Right.
know? And, and so I wrote Undone and I released it and people really liked it. And I
Yeah.
really liked it. I was so invested. And even before I released it, I immediately started writing Bewilder. And I just really loved the world and the universe. They were quite short novels. So that's probably how I got so many out so fast. Specifically, she said, who fucking cares about like if this is lucrative, if this is gonna be, your day job immediately? Like, why don't you start building something that is meaningful to you? And I know that that sounds so stupid in hindsight. Like it sounds so obvious, but I needed to hear that, like you can be authentic to yourself and still find a way to make it your career.
Absolutely. Well, and people are so thirsty for representation, especially
Completely.
queer women.
Completely.
So you're the rare person I've spoken to who has an actual MFA. Do you think that the idea that queer stuff won't sell came from sort of being in that MFA program? Or do you think that was something that you had internalized just from the media you consumed?
I in my MFA, a friend started introducing me to Radcliffe and Melissa
Mhm.
Braden and Georgia Beers, and I was reading all of these, classic early, well, not even early Sapphic, but kind of in that golden era of like
Mhm.
when Bold Strokes was first getting going. And I it never occurred to me that I could also write that.
Okay.
And I've always been a romance reader. I've always loved, the bodice rippers, the little mass market ones that you get at the grocery store. I've
Oh,
always
yeah.
loved that shit. And in my MFA, I came to my MFA as a romance reader, as a romance, author. Everything I was writing was specifically romance based, and I was shut down so quickly. In my MFA, you know, genre is stupid. Smart people don't write genre. Smart people don't read genre. And I think I just internalized that criticism to mean if I want to be successful,
Mm.
I need to change myself and change what I love. So I think that had like very clearly started rewiring my work. And I wrote most of a novel in my MFA that I still like, but I really burned out on it, and it was Sapphic. It was about a lion tamer who falls in love with a painted lady at the circus in, like, the early 1900s.
Bryce. Okay. No pressure. We do need this eventually to resurface, but we can come back to that later.
Okay, okay. But so I got so burnt out after, doing that and
Yeah.
hearing all of these criticisms of that work, that's why I wrote Most Wonderful. Just like, "Oh my god, I need something so fluffy and sweet and Christmas." The complete opposite of what I had been doing. And so I think, yeah, my MFA, I learned a lot of fantastic things. Um, I'm the only person from my cohort who is making a living off of my writing. So, I'll say that.
Hey. A note to people doing MFA programs. I think that I did grad school, but it wasn't in creative. It was in something completely different. But I do think grad school is a really good crucible for teaching you a lot of what I'll say like soft skills, how to get something done, how to write. But I do think that there is a misunderstanding of what is marketable. I grew up in the early 2000s, and it was like if it was cool and if it was popular, it was bad, and it feels like
Mhm.
that's what people have internalized in the writing programs, which is wild.
No, I completely agree. I we're only 1 year apart, Megan, okay?
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Shout out.
I graduated high school in 2005.
Okay. Oh,
Um,
yeah, what exactly 1 year?
exactly.
Yeah.
So, my MFA, I was 25 when I started my MFA, but
Okay. Oh, you were really young. That's really young.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I had gone to my undergrad, and then I
Mhm,
I went to a different grad program because I
mhm.
wanted to live abroad, and I also didn't wanna try the workforce in 2009, you know?
Yeah, well, who
Um,
did?
didn't wanna try that.
Yeah.
So,
That seems bad
um
and awful.
yeah. So I actually my f my first master's is I wrote my thesis on marketing romance novels to feminists.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that's
Bryce,
kind of
you have a cool
and
life.
living living that dream, but the I don't know, the idea of romance back then is much different than the idea of romance now.
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like there's a different legitimacy to romance now, and I think people are understanding that it is the most profitable genre for a reason, and people do care about women's voices, and, you know, I specifically remember in my MFA reading an essay by a writer I respected, whose name now escapes me,
Mhm,
Claire something, but the
mhm,
essay was specifically how she realized she was writing for the male gaze. I started my MFA in 2013. There was something being drilled into us that, like, this masculinity is what made our work legitimate, and
mhm.
that was really hard to unpack.
Oh, for sure. Because it is such a patriarchal, heteronormative, white practice, it really does bleed into every aspect of it. The best selling novels are genre novels. Full
Mhm.
stop. It's really hard unless you're Percival Everett to get a best-selling novel that's literary fiction.
Completely.
And it just boggles my mind that in MFA programs or in other arts programs, they're like, and now what we're going to do is read 4 authors you've never heard of, but write pretty.
Yep. And they write beautifully, but
Mhm. Or sometimes I'm like, this is illegible to a
but
person.
this is bullshit. I
Yeah.
specifically remember, like, reading, work by people I respect and being like, "What was that even trying to say to me?" You
Yeah.
know? I just feel like in my MFA program specifically, there was a real push for, you know, you write short stories and you submit them to literary journals, and that is what will make you legitimate. And that is what will get you a book deal. You have to have so many short stories and so many literary journals, and that is what's going to get you a book deal. And they like didn't teach us more than that.
Yeah.
And I certainly would have never even thought, oh, I will self publish because to me that was like, oh, well, only losers self-publish. And now I'm like, my God, like, why? Why were these ideas drilled into us?
Well, especially as a queer writer, if you want to be successful and you're not the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, you're going to find your success on the indie side, on the self published
Yes.
side.
And it's always fucking been that way. You
Mhm.
think of like zines, you think of all of the indie publications,
Mhm.
you think of Autostraddle in its glory days, all independent. And I just feel like there's always been a real DIY component to queerness. And why shouldn't that bleed into the publishing world?
Oftentimes, because traditionally published, especially romance novels, I'm not as versed in other genres, so I'll just speak to romance. The queerness in queer romance novels are often edited out of the novel because they are editing to a heteronormative group.
Completely.
And then people wonder why when you go to conferences or when you go to places and all the indie authors are where the lines are out the door and they're like, "Why is this happening?" I'm like, "Well, because books were allowed to stay queer and they felt
Yes.
people feel represented."
Yes. I always felt super strongly. I want to be writing about queerness from a queer perspective for a queer audience. And in my self-publishing journey, once I wrote Undone, it like, unlocked something for me. And I was like, this is what I want to be doing. This is where I want my voice to be heard. Specifically, I didn't want to be working with a straight editor and explaining references to her. And then I say her, that's so generous. I didn't want to be explaining, like, well, this will make sense to my audience. All of those ownership things felt really important to me when I was
Absolutely.
considering trad publishing versus self publishing.
To go back a little bit, when did you realize you were an artist? Like,
I've always been a writer. I won my first writing competition in first grade.
that's really
And
cute.
I wrote a story and it, went to some judging and, everyone had to write a story in class or something like that. And mine won. And I remember just this feeling of accomplishment and this intense pride
Yeah.
in that specifically. Yeah, I was good at math. Yeah, I was, pretty good at the monkey bars. But have you heard that I won a prize for my
Yeah.
writing? And it's always been something that I've just loved. I've always been a reader. My parents are readers. I was always encouraged to have an intense imagination. And I'm very, very thankful for that. Mainly because my parents aren't creatives. Um, but they are creative thinkers. And they really allowed that in me and encouraged it and fostered that.
That's so cool. Like, it's so fun. 'Cause I knew I was a writer young too, like, I just loved it. Like, I didn't think it was
Yeah.
something I could ever do, but
Mhm.
it was
Me
the
too.
thing I loved most. It's so weird how our society is set up where it's like, "I know you love this thing, but it's not something you can pursue."
Yes, complete it is specifically for artists.
Yeah.
Specifically, no one is like, "Oh, well, you'll never grow up to be an engineer."
Yeah.
Like, what? Why would we Why would we make it seem like your dream isn't legitimate? There are so many working full-time artists in the world,
So
you know?
many. Yeah.
And so many of them are working for themselves and doing incredible stuff. It's such an odd thing that, we say to musicians too, or fine art, or um, anything to do with the arts. Like, oh, well, good luck making a job out of that. There are so many paths you could take instead of making people feel bad for being creative.
Absolutely. The working class artist is so maligned
Yes.
where it's like, I don't have a gazillion dollars, but I get to do the thing I love every day and I can pay my rent.
Completely. Yes. Completely.
People think if you're not at the pinnacle, then you're not successful. And that's a very
Yes.
specific to the arts thing.
Yes.
Because no one looks at a senior manager and is like, well, you're not a director, so you're not successful at business.
I If my books aren't on the New York Times bestseller list,
Mhm.
then, like, are you sure you can call this your day job? Are you sure? You know? So it's a it's a weird, I don't know. I probably have strong feelings about this, and especially entwined with feminism and the work that women have always done being delegitimized and, you know.
Absolutely. I do believe that so many more people make a living doing art than you understand. You being the
Yes.
universal you, everything you look at was created by an artist. The billboard you look at, every ad on TV, everything you look at, every time you read a business's Instagram post or whatever, like that is an artist. They are doing commercial media, but they're still an artist. That's what they're
Completely.
doing.
Completely. Before I went full time, I worked in marketing and I
Yeah.
was writing for my marketing job. I was
Mhm,
still creating art through this. There's so many different paths
mhm.
for artistic people.
And it's all legitimate, and that's the part that makes me so mad. To our point, like, it's like literary fiction is real fiction, and everything else is genre.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna be like, literary fiction is a genre. Like, it's also a genre.
Oh my god. I honestly, I think specifically queerness has made me more comfortable with finding a different path when it
Yes.
comes to artistry because I'm outside of, the very typical person by
Mhm.
being queer.
Right.
And so I feel like being queer has given me courage to take risks in terms of other parts of my life.
So real. Authenticity breeds authenticity, so when you finally allow yourself to be authentically yourself, authentically queer,
Yes.
it is a permission structure to say, "And I can do other things authentically?"
Absolutely. Once I stopped writing that fantasy series, which I have never touched since, it was not good, everyone. It was not good, but it's fine. Sometimes you write things and they just help you and no one has to see them, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But once I started writing authentically and writing in a queer voice, in a queer mindset for queer readers, my writing just changed dramatically. I feel like it got way better personally, and I allowed myself to take different chances because I was already taking a chance by writing queer fiction.
Absolutely. It's so funny because the most popular advice anyone gives, just write the book you wish were out there. But
Mm.
if you're a queer person, you start writing a queer book, they're like, sorry, not the book you wish was out there, actually. It's the
Completely.
book that I wish was out there, which is just another straight book. I want to dig a little bit into your craft. You are a person who writes romantic comedies. Almost all your books, even your latest, is at its core a dark romantic comedy. And it's hard. It's really hard. And a lot of people mistake writing people who are funny versus writing a comedy.
Mhm.
A lot of people are good at banter or will have a funny protagonist, but their novel's not a comedy. Can you talk a little bit about writing comedy? Because you write comedy in the traditional, there's a setup, there's a punchline, you do a lot of physical comedy, you write literal comedy.
I feel like comedy has always been really central to my personality. Listen, I was a chubby little freckled kid with glasses, and I wasn't very good at sports, and I was, never the smartest person in the room, but I could make everyone laugh. And that it became just this foundation to my personality of like some people are popular because they're really pretty or rich or
I
good
would
at
like to point out that
sports.
you are a full smoke show, and I don't really appreciate you looping in
But
attractiveness in
I'm
this
just saying
moment. Right, right,
I'm
right.
just saying
I hear you. I hear
baby
you.
Bryce internalized
Understood.
this, okay?
Understood. Understood.
Of like
Fully understand.
comedy, you know what? You gotta embrace something about yourself. For me, it was comedy. And I feel also that other aspects of my life have really lent themselves to that. I'm the youngest child. And I grew up in a family where we never met a bit that we didn't want to run with. And I just feel like it's been so inherent to my upbringing, to the way my siblings and I talk, to the way my parents and I interact. It feels very innate. And so it's also in that way something I'm extremely drawn to. So I love watching comedy. I specifically love romantic comedies. I love hijinks and chaos, and setting up physical comedy is so fun to me. I think honestly, I think that's what I'm why I'm drawn to it. It's fun to me. So I want to have fun. I want to do something so silly. And that's the kind of stuff I like to read too. But specifically, it almost comes naturally to me.
It makes so much sense. The timing feels very the beats of a romantic comedy. Introduce your main character in a way that is kind of ridiculous and silly, but makes them very endeared to you. Then when you do your big meet cute, it's almost always a very funny, very physical something is occurring. And then it's the beats of high, low, like a emotional high immediately followed by something deeply funny and embarrassing.
Yeah.
Then the recovery, and then there's like another emotional high beat. And then the other protagonist experience something that will bring them low. And it just follows that rhythm, and so it makes sense that that would be very innate to you and like very in what you have consumed because it does feel like your
Totally.
natural timing.
Totally. I think for me, when it comes to conflict
Mhm.
specifically, I'm not drawn to angst as much as I am
Mhm.
to like other ways that we can develop this character and
Mhm.
force them to grow.
Right.
And why have a brooding character when you could have a character slip and fall into a display table of dildos?
That's all I'm saying.
Like
There are options. Well, and I think that you play with tension really well in a way that other people might play with it in terms of like sexual tension or emotional tension, but you're really good at situational tension. Like you're really good at creating an environment that forces a character to make a choice and then you respond to that choice. Like yours is you have very active characters. Does that make sense?
yeah. Yeah,
And I think
definitely.
that's and that leads to comedy, right? Here's 14 choices, I'm choosing the weirdest. Or
Yes.
here's 14
Always.
choices, I'm choosing the worst possible one.
Always.
And then it's a domino.
I had a writing teacher early on tell me that conflict is when you, well, a story in general
Mhm.
is when you take your character and you put them in a tree with no way to get down.
Okay.
And that's the story. And then conflict is then you stand there and you throw rocks at them. And for me, it's just always been more fun to make those rocks absurd
Yeah.
and ridiculous and funny and show character growth and show tension and show character chemistry in a way that would also make me laugh.
I think that true comedy in romance is underdone in the written word. It's
Mm,
used a lot in like TV and things because you
TV
can
and
visually
movies,
see
yeah.
it, but writing it is such a skill because you do have to your point, create tension
Mhm.
and like create environmental moments and still be developing character and developing all that. So it's just like such a different skill set.
Absolutely. I think another way I think about it is you show the reader exactly what's going to happen. And you have that be the most absurd possible thing that could happen, and
Mhm.
you show them early what's going to happen so that they're like, "This couldn't possibly be happening." And so
Right.
they're also taken on this journey of I there's no way she's going to do this, but then you do it,
And then you do it.
and you take
Well,
everyone along for the ride.
yeah. And in your latest book, it was really fun to see. So, oftentimes when you're writing romantic comedy, you specifically, it's the if we both have like a light and a dark side of our comedic personality, you're writing on the light side. And it was so fun to watch you turn it to the dark side of your humor, to see the thing you're not saying that you kinda wish you could say, and it felt very free in a way for you to show the other side of your humor, the darker piece of it, with it still being deeply hilarious, but it was so darkly funny in some moments.
Well, thank you. I honestly, I love dark humor. Oh my
Mhm,
god, I'm a sucker for dark humor.
mhm.
I get through all trauma with dark humor personally.
Yeah.
And so I knew that having a pretty traumatic book,
Yeah.
some traumatic things happen in that
Yeah,
book.
some dark shit
Um,
happens for sure, no doubt.
totally, totally. So I was like, you know, I think if we just call it how it is, that's
Mhm,
gonna be the funniest part, you
for
know?
sure. Well, and it's the way you describe things is I'm just literally describing to you what happened. But because I'm literally describing it to you and I'm not pretending the fallout isn't real, it's the funniest possible option. It's like, you see in a movie, like someone jumps out a window, but you just follow the protagonist. You were really good about someone jumping out a window and then you talking about the glass that hit the people below the window.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you're like, the actual fallout of this is kind of horrific. They are going to save somebody. What they're not seeing is that guy lost an eye.
Completely. Yeah, yeah.
And I just thought it was so fun to see you turn it, and it is absurd, right? In our storytelling sense, we're gonna follow the car. We're not thinking about the crash. We're following the chase. And you
Right.
are so good about thinking about the crash. You were so good about not following the car, but staying back and being like, and here's the fallout. And it's a
Totally.
shit show.
Totally. And someone jumps out a window and instead of the camera following them, the camera pans back to everyone in the room being like, "What the fuck?" That's way more interesting to me.
For sure.
And everyone on the ground being like, "What is happening?" Just that situational awareness, I guess. I feel like is much more interesting than just like honing in on if you're following a person jumping out a window, I don't know how interesting that's going to be.
Right.
That's not interesting to me. And so where is it interesting? The least expected places.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and the making the logical but unexpected choice is an area where you thrive.
Well, thank you.
Never mind
Mm,
is a great example of this, where it's basically the story of like a very high level, super successful soccer player, and then literally a PR person for a zoo, and they're falling in love. And that's the story. And every choice you made is so logical. Like, if you're living it, it's the logical choice, but it's not the choice that my brain instilled in me by, like, Nora Roberts and Ann M. Martin would make,
mhm, mhm.
and I think that's why it's so real and so fun. It's so grounded to
Well, thank you.
have the perspective of this PR person looking at this person and being like, "So hot, undeniable. You're behaving like a psycho." And, like, having someone
Completely.
really describing their behavior, it's not the person doing the Instagram reel, it's the other person watching the 2 people take the Instagram reel,
Totally.
where you're like, "We're living a life in a world surrounded by people."
Yeah.
And it's so
That's
funny where you choose to say, "And what we're gonna do is," when everyone else would zoom in, you're zooming out. I think it's such an interesting craft choice.
No, I think that just comes naturally to me because sometimes in that zoom in, that's not where the tension is not with those people in that moment. It's
Right.
how their wild behavior is affecting everything else. And that's where the humor is
Absolutely.
because you're seeing it in that zoomed out lens. I love, love, love playing with that distance, that narrative distance, that emotional distance specifically. I think it's so interesting. Um, and I think it's an underrated craft choice, in my
It
opinion.
truly is. Well, and I think it's why a lot of people write really funny people, but fail to write truly funny stories because they're scared of breaking that closeness that people think is so necessary for romance
Mhm,
and pulling back to show the absurdity.
mhm,
And you're so good at knowing the timing of, I've got to show you how bonkers this choice they're making is. Let me zoom out. In One Last Run, when they're doing when she gets so jealous when they're learning to ski,
mhm,
and your choice, instead of staying in her point of view so tight, to like give us clues to what this really looks like as opposed to her experience of it. So you're watching her tell herself, this is cool and I am doing fine and it's okay. While we know you're pizziing your ass down this bunny slope and you look bananas. And like we know that, but she doesn't know that.
yes,
It's why it's so funny.
yes. Honestly, I think that that is just, like, a thing I do in my life, that zoom out of, like, "This has gotta look so stupid," you
Right.
know? Like, what does
Mhm.
this actually look
Yeah.
like?
Or like,
I
yeah,
think
that's such a cool skill you have to say, I know what this is. I know what this feels like in the middle of it, but what does it look like to that guy behind us?
Mhm.
So cool. It's such a good craft thing. I love it so much.
Thank you.
It's so good. When you're writing, what does your writing practice look like?
Well, it's changed a little bit.
Mhm,
Uh, I I used to just let the muse take me. And
mhm.
now I have to put some working hours, some office hours on the muse. My daughter goes to school in the morning and I am not a morning person, but I am wrangling that muse with me to write in the morning and really forcing it. I think that it's made me more conscious of where I need to be putting my creative energy
Mhm.
in a good way.
Yeah.
And really focusing on how I'm the type of writer where I will stare at a blank page and just like I'll be visualizing the scene, take some time to really feel right. I'll read, the last chapter I wrote and like, really let myself sink into it. And I feel very comfortable doing that. But right now, that's not realistic for my life. My daughter is in preschool, so she goes to school for 2.5 hours. So I have 2 hours at best to write. And
Mhm.
so putting limitations on my writing, I think has helped me a lot creatively. I've always sworn by sprinting, do nothing else for 20 minutes. I also am a deeply competitive person,
Sure.
and I have found that gamifying my writing really works for my brain. I draft on a site called For the Words, and you battle word count monsters.
Bryce, this is perfect.
And it sounds so silly, but it really works for my brain. And something inside of me is like, yeah, but I gotta kill this 900 word monster. Like, I gotta get through this. And they have like time limits, and just
Amazing.
something about it psychologically really works for me. Um, and I've trained my wife to where if she comes to talk to me and I'm like, I'm still battling, she's like, okay.
I got it.
All right, I'll leave you alone. So,
I love
um,
that. I love that so
it
much.
it has forced me to really, like, lock in,
Mhm.
and I'm grateful that I found that.
Yeah.
I found that pretty early on in my writing, thankfully, but that has specifically helped. Sprinting has helped. I don't really love, like, writing at my desk. I usually write, like, in a little goblin position in my bed, and I do my best. I do my best.
I love that. I haven't had the privilege of talking to a lot of parents. Returning to writing after becoming a mom, what has that journey been like in terms of like, refinding your voice and refinding that space to allow yourself to create when there's a tiny little human always needing something from you?
Honestly, it really forced me to, like, po change the way I was writing, and the way I was approaching writing, where, you know, I can't believe I ever said I was busy before I had a child. Like, I what the fuck was I talking about, you know?
Totally understand.
Like, Bryce, you were never busy before. Um,
I love that. You're like, you were having a great time, actually.
Completely. Like, you had so much free time, and you did what? Oh, you binged Netflix. Like,
Filling
great.
the well. Bryce, we call that filling the well in the
Filling the
unchilded
well.
community.
Filling the well. Yes. The unchilded.
I'm filling the well, Bryce.
This is dink erasure. I'm so sorry. I think my experience has been a little different than many parents' experience in that for the first 4 months of my daughter's life, she lived in the hospital, and I was only able to hold her for 3 hours a day, and, like, my journey into motherhood felt odd, and it made me stop completely. I couldn't write in that environment, and that was deeply inconvenient because I had already signed on to do a group project, the Pride series
Yeah.
with I Heart Sapphic, and I didn't want to disappoint TB and Miranda. Not wanting to disappoint people brought me back to writing, thankfully.
Shout out social pressure.
Oh my God, completely. So I wrote this novella, and honestly, it's a lot unlike anything I had written before because just I just let it pour out of me with a lot more freedom.
Mhm.
And then I took a break for, I wanna say, like, 7 months, and I was in another group project and wrote Ghost of Christmas Past.
My favorite Christmas novel, guys, best Christmas novel. I'm not kidding. I'm not, this is not me blowing smoke. Check the read receipts. Go to
Oh my
my
gosh.
threads. Go to Substack. It's my favorite.
I
Best twist. Best twist.
Well,
Oh,
thank
you're
you.
laughing? I'm not. This is not a joking matter for me.
We would never
We would
joke about
never.
Merritt and
That's all
Dylan,
I'm
okay?
saying.
We would
That's all I'm
never.
saying.
Um, that book was, coming back into myself, and it was also the first time where Um, I felt comfortable stepping back into being an autonomous person outside of caring for my daughter
Okay.
and, like, would carve out writing time again and tell my wife, like, "All right, have the kid all day on Saturday because 'cause I'm writing." And I was able to kind of, like, own that again and be very purposeful about I need this. I need my career. And not even my career. I need to write. It felt like I had lost a part of my identity.
Mhm. Was it, did you feel guilt around that, like, needing that time at
Completely.
first?
Oh,
Okay.
completely. Completely. Because when you're a parent and you're the primary parent,
Mhm,
um, or the or the default parent often, because I was staying home because I had carved out this, you know,
mhm,
I'm a full-time author. So my job was the flexible one. My wife's
mhm.
job was the one that gave us health insurance.
Right, and everyone needs that, a health insurance job and then the other guy.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm very, very privileged to have a partner who works a full-time job that has health benefits.
Shout out
And she supports me, not financially, but I'm saying, like, she supports me
as a writer.
as a writer, as this is, like, what I do. She has
Mhm.
always, always, always taken this part of me seriously. I met her when I was doing my MFA. So she never even got to play that this wasn't who she was marrying, you know? But I wrote these 2 novellas, and then I sat with them for a little while. I wrote another fantasy novel, and I read a lot and I took the time to just refill my well
Mhm.
and to figure out what I wanted to do. I had published prolifically before having a kid. And I think that if I had continued on that path, I would have burnt out within the next year. And I think that having my daughter forced me to realize that like other people depend on me and I cannot just burn out. And I need to find a sustainable way to do this. If that looks like writing for 2 hours a day, and then if I'm on a deadline or if I'm editing or if I'm really in it, writing in the evening when my kiddo goes to bed. But realizing that I had to make a change really did help. I think it helped my writing. I think I'm a much better writer now. I publish a lot slower, but
Well,
I
your slower work is still fucking killer, so don't
well, thank
be
you.
too hard on yourself there, my love.
I I am I'm really proud of everything I'm putting out.
I think, especially as women, and I'm just gonna make this very gendered, we are made to feel guilty for not caretaking. Whenever there is a societal expectation of caretaking, and then we
Mhm.
choose self-care,
Mhm.
there's such a level of guilt with that. When you are feeling guilty, I feel it very hard to access my creativity.
Completely. Yes. Yes. I think that writing those 2 novellas helped me, like, dip my foot back
Mhm.
into that part of my identity and giving myself the permission to take that time off while also still maintaining that I was a writer. I still all through that, I might have technically been a stay-at-home mom, but when people said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a romance author." And it remained integral to my identity. The guilt part of that is so everything about parenting or yeah, parenting and caretaking comes with a level of self-imposed guilt in my
Yeah.
experience. I think being queer specifically helped me in this way because I saw my wife being a mother and having her career and no one would ever bat an eye. No one would ever accuse her of not being a great mom because she
Right.
was working. She modeled that for me basically.
Right.
Um and even though I was the primary parent and my daughter's care takes up a lot of my time and a lot of my brain,
Mhm.
I think that seeing my wife in that role and realizing that we're equal in this. I don't just have to be the martyr here, One of us doesn't have to sacrifice their career to have a happy, healthy child. We can both be fulfilled. And I still struggle with that. Let's be real at that.
I think there's something so beautiful in kids who get to see both of their parents living wholly. And I think that I mean, I'm not a parent, but I've worked with a lot of kids in my job. And I think for me, watching kids who know it's okay to love things because they've had it modeled for them is so important. I'm a big Mr. Rogers fan, and he would
Mm.
often talk about Margaret McFadden, she was his mentor, and she would talk about how she would bring in like artists to play with the kids, and the artists would be like, "Oh, what do you want me to teach them?" And she would say, "Oh, I just want you to do it." Because the best education a person can have is watching somebody do something they love and showing them how to
Mm.
love it as well. For me, one of the greatest things anyone can see, but especially kids, but anyone can see is someone loving what they do out loud, you know? I think that we
Yes.
miss
Oh, yeah.
that when we feel like we have to martyr ourselves because then our kids don't get to see us. They get to see the stressed out, giving, unfulfilled version of us. And I don't think anyone is served by seeing the worst version of someone.
Completely, completely. I've seen a lot of women who have sacrificed their entire identity to
Mhm.
their, being a mother, raising children. And then when your children are older and don't need as much of you, or when your children become adults, like what do you have left? What do you
Yeah.
do?
Mhm.
And that really scared me. Just
Yeah.
seeing that modeled, I was adamant that I do not want that specifically.
Right.
Um,
I don't want to lose myself to my
yeah,
adorable tiny human.
and, like, I love her. I love her so
Yeah.
much, you know?
I love
Like,
her, and I've only seen her via pictures and vague interactions on the internet, and I would take a bullet for that tiny human, no question.
who wouldn't, you know? Like,
Yeah, oh
she's
my gosh.
perfect. She's
Perfect.
perfect. Is she also inspires me. She's a badass, and ultimately, I wanna be someone that she's proud of, and I think by continuing to show her that you should pursue what your passion is, I think that that is just going to make me a better parent, and I hope that it instills, you know, a love of creativity and curiosity in her too.
Absolutely. So you and I have something in common. We're both what I would consider magpies in terms. I know a lot of people like I only read Sapphic. You and I are omnivores. Like we're taking video games, movies, all kinds of books, everything. Like, we're magpies in terms of bringing in inspiration. What is inspiring you lately? And how do you interact with inspiration?
Um, I've been finding music really, really inspiring lately. I specifically from Hell with Love was super inspired by Florence and the Machine's new album.
God, what an
And
album.
it's such a good album.
It's
It's
so
such a good
good.
album. It's
So
such a good album. And that album specifically is really interesting because she talks about femininity and motherhood and losing a pregnancy specifically is like a theme. I have found myself if I'm struggling with writing, that album specifically has brought me a lot of ideas and a lot of like just refills the well. I also have been listening to a lot of books. I've stayed really, really tight in the fantasy genre.
I
Um,
love that.
and a lot of sapphic fantasy, and thank God, you know, there's more sapphic fantasy now than ever, but all fantasy in general and not just specifically romance. I found that pretty inspiring lately. I've also loved finding real human made art, which I feel like has become so hard.
God, it's so stupid how hard it is.
It's so stupid. There's a few art pieces specifically that gave me very concrete ideas for From Hell with Love and more books in the series, because there will be more. And this is going to sound really cheesy, but I have found a lot of inspiration in being friends with other writers, being close with JJ Arias and co
Mhm.
writing with her. We are starting a new series that we're co writing together and seeing someone else's process, I feel like I have just like osmosis,
Like,
you know,
bring it
like
in.
gotten yeah, like gotten inspiration from what she is getting inspiration from or, you know, we'll in the dumbest places too, we'll send each other a reel like, "Oh, this is definitely our characters," you know? That kind of silly thing. And surrounding myself with creative people, playing Dungeons and Dragons every week, you know?
Ayo.
Hey, has has also helped me creatively. It makes me think completely outside of,
Mhm.
you know, anything I'm personally working on, but it also I love watching other people role play in real time. Like
Yeah,
as nerdy as that sounds,
it's so
like
fun.
watching watching the choices people make, I'm constantly surprised in the best way
Mhm.
and constantly inspired. I also like, you know, I'll watch Dimension 20 or Critical Role. I find that kind of like improv super inspiring and a lot of like improv comedy in my writing for sure. So,
There
yeah,
is a heightening of stakes and like a yes anding. It's so important for writers to understand because you can always pull back, but it's really hard to go further once you've written something down on the page. And so it's
definitely.
always do the weirdest. Do the weirdest take
Mhm.
first and then make it less weird. But if you've done the less weird version, it's very hard to authentically inject a weirder take.
Oh, completely. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
This entire conversation is like baseline fuck turfs. What we're going to talk
Love
about?
it.
Fuck turfs.
Yeah.
But I also was a Harry Potter kid. I also was a
Mhm.
person who was really inspired by that series and then have had to live with someone who I very much admired as an artist and as a person being an active piece of shit.
Yes.
And I still actively struggle with it, navigating with, I can't lie to you that some of me when I'm writing is inspired by the way Rowling did certain things.
Mhm.
And so, how do you navigate the notion of this art inspired me and I understand this person sucks and nothing about this is okay and I'm not supporting this, but I can't pretend to you that wasn't a part of my story?
Oh, yeah, and, like, I have to be honest with you, it was a huge part of my like, being a Harry Potter fan was a huge part of my identity. It's so hard for me because Harry Potter hit me at a really developmental time in my writing. I s used to role play Harry Potter online in, like
Like doing like literary RPGs.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I that was, like, a huge part of my life all through my teenage years. I did write some fan fiction, but specifically, I was live role playing with
Yeah.
other writers where you would write a paragraph, they would write a paragraph back, and I it's like I'm still mourning it. I'm, like,
Mhm.
grieving that this thing that brought me such joy and such a large part of my identity has become a a vessel for cruelty
Yeah.
and has become a dog whistle for something that I am so actively against.
Absolutely.
Uh, I know readers who, if I casually dropped a Harry Potter reference in an earlier work, I know readers reading that today with
Mhm.
today's context will probably feel disappointed, you know,
Oh, for sure.
and that haunts me because you know it was such a part of my lexicon. It was such a part of my identity that I feel like those references just came really naturally to me. I
And it was
still
so queer coded and the community around Harry Potter was so queer. So it's like so hard for me to explain to someone in 2026 how in 2006 this is the language we used to signal to each other
Yes.
that they were in a safe space.
Oh my god. Yes. I've never witnessed anything like what that has become now. I'm bitter and I feel personally mad about
Yeah,
it, you
all the
know?
time.
I and it's really hard for me because like, you know, there's a new Harry Potter series coming out
Mhm.
and I'm not going to fucking watch it,
No, would never.
you know? I and I'm fucking mad that I
I'm
can't
mad
watch
all
it.
the time.
Yeah, I feel like robbed of
Mhm.
joy from it, and it's really frustrating to me that JK Rowling sucks so bad.
And there's something so sacred about the art that defines you early.
Yes.
'Cause, like, the first book came out in 1998.
I read the first book in 7th grade.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, we were the age of the
Yes.
kids
I
that grew up
was
with it.
11, you
Right,
know? Like,
and
I yeah, it was such a big part, you know,
mhm,
you get the midnight release.
mhm,
You know, binge read it the whole next day so that you can go talk to your friends about it.
mhm.
Like, man,
Well,
it was rough. Yeah.
and it's like
It is
being
rough.
let down it's so rough, and being let down by somebody you believed in so much
God.
hurts really badly. I can't deny this because that's inauthentic, but I also you don't need to read it. Please
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's just like it's wild because, like, art matters so much.
Yes.
And when I was growing up, there were so few queer spaces and queer books and queer things.
Yes.
And as a queer community, we glommed onto Harry Potter fiercely.
Fiercely.
And it's
Because there was an otherness
correct.
inherently.
He comes out of a closet literally.
Yes. And then he can't tell the, you know, the muggle world, the non-magical world about it. You know, like there's yeah, it's such infuriating to me. Yeah,
It's so
it's I
sad.
don't know. I'm still I will never forgive her. I fiercely judge people who are still fully on board. I went to Harry Potter World with Luke
Mhm.
and my sister and Stephanie Shea.
Shout out Stephanie Shea, one of the greats.
Stephanie Shea. We went to Harry Potter World 20 July of 2021.
Mhm.
And this was when, like, J.K. Rowling was, like, very obviously a TERF, and I specifically remember being in Harry Potter World and what would have been, like, probably a life-changingly magical experience for me. Just it was it's like, well, I don't know if I wanna, like, buy anything and give her more money, you know? Like, we got the tickets for free. I don't know. I felt like this could be such a magical place for so many people, and you've made it such an unsafe place because
S
of your ignorant hatred. And fucking why? You know? Why?
Take
You
your money and go
you
live on
could
an
s
island.
yes, you could shut the fuck up. And instead, you chose to be this person? You chose to be so obviously evil? What?
How did you miss the story of Harry Potter?
Girl, seriously.
Oh, it sucks. I
My
just yeah,
god.
and there's a very specific betrayal in that we trusted you so much, and you betrayed that so deeply.
So
And
deeply.
for you as an artist, are you ever thinking about that aspect of it? Like, the trust the readers have given you and the space you're
Mm.
creating for people?
You know, when I'm drafting, I'm vibing. I'm in my own little world. When I'm editing, I take a more outside lens. I think that the themes that I put in my work, I might not be as conscious of. And when I'm editing, those are the times when I'm pulling those themes out a little harder, or I'm realizing I need to be tweaking this or subduing this. This isn't the path I want to be going down. I think for me, feeling responsible for my readership comes most when I'm interacting with the community, choosing what events I want to support specifically with my name, with my money, with my presence, because there is an unwritten contract of like, I sign on to everything this event is doing. And there are a lot of problematic fucking events out there right now. And I feel responsible that I'm joining events specifically inclusive to, the trans community, to the Black community, to um to the entire Sapphic community, not just lesbians, making sure that the events I'm supporting are including bi and pan women in that Sapphic label. That really matters to me. And I also find myself more willing to, um, my sister calls it being the Kool-Aid man. Um, I've never known subtlety in my life. I will just fully jump through the wall of conflict and run straight into it. Um,
Same.
and so I
Oh,
find
I just want
myself,
you to like me, but as soon as my justice button is hit, I'm like, "Oh, wow, well, fuck you. Okay, understood now."
yes, yes. And because I have a lot of fucking privilege and I recognize that about myself.
Mhm.
And so I need to be using the way I am seen as a safe part of a community, a figure in a community. I need to be using that to ensure that people understand what is cool and what is not. I will call out bullshit and
Absolutely.
never worried about like my brand at that point. I am more worried about um the community as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, because when you say I'm going to an event, it's an invitation,
Yeah.
and you have to be aware of
Yes,
where the spaces you're inviting people into.
completely, completely. And people are going to use their money to go to that event to see you. They're not only going to spend their money with you at that event, they're going to spend their money at that event and supporting what that event stands for. And so
Absolutely.
your event better fucking stand for something good and not just,
Absolutely.
hyping up one person, hyping up,
Absolutely.
the ego of the event runners.
Yeah. Or even the ego of a specific subset of folks or whatever they're trying to do. And I think
Yes.
most people, most of the time, are really trying to create queer spaces that are safe. But it's also like you have
Yes.
to be aware all the time that you
Yes.
are not bringing someone into a space where you're like, "Oh, hey, my bad. That's on me."
Totally.
You don't, like, ever wanna be
Totally.
apologizing for an event you had nothing to do with outside of
Right.
agreeing to come.
Right. And there is a certain level of risk I'm willing to take with events. I recently signed on to an event where I knew I would be the only Sapphic author. And it was a local event. It was like meet a local romance author. And it was for a library. And I knew the librarian. She's a part of GCLS and I love her. MJ Lowe. Hello. I love you.
MJ, ugh, what
Oh,
an angel.
the best.
An angel.
And so I signed on to this event knowing that I was going to be the only Sapphic author, knowing that the readership probably wasn't Sapphic at
Mhm.
all. And I was feeling a little nervous about it, but I was also like, you know what? I, as a cis femme lesbian, can put myself in this situation and automatically could be like a little bit of a buffer. I understand that a straight cis woman looking at me will assume that we are the same. And therefore, I can talk to her in a different way,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It makes no
And
sense. It's a safe
yeah,
entry point for people who might otherwise be afraid to enter a space.
totally. Totally. And so, um, yeah, I always try to weigh that risk and support events and things of that nature that I believe in.
Why do you write queer stories?
Fundamentally, I believe that queer women deserve happiness. And for me, I am drawn to romance and I write romance because there is a happily ever after. And so we get to go on this journey of transformation knowing that we're safe at the end. And queer women specifically are not promised that happy ending. Um, and so it's important for me for representation to show even one person like,
Mhm.
you know, it you you can you can go through something, you can go through a trial, you can go through something difficult and you can you can come out happy on the other side. I want to add more positivity to the world. You and I both lived through the bury your gaze
Ugh. Yeah, we
moment
sure did.
and I just think that we deserve better.
Yeah.
So,
The
I'm going to
full
add my
spectrum.
voice to that.
Hell
Yes,
yeah. I love that.
completely.
Okay, so the last thing I've been doing is picking a fight with the authors
Perfect.
about something. Here's a problem. You and I are deeply aligned. So what I want to ask you is what is your biggest hot take that you're like, if I said this out loud, people would think it's wild, but I'm telling you I'm right.
I don't like ice queens.
Me
I
either. Fuck
don't
them.
don't like ice queens. I think that there are so many more interesting ways to portray femininity, to portray strength, to portray someone who has their walls up than a 50-year-old white femme in a pencil skirt and heels. I don't want to read about this person anymore. Um,
That is hateful. That is mean. They're mean.
yeah. Yeah, they're mean, they're cruel, and they like have to be redeemed at the end.
Mhm.
I think that you can write a a hurt, scared person in a much more interesting way.
What readers, I believe with my whole heart, what readers who love an ice queen want to believe is that complicated women can be loved.
Oh my god, yes.
And people are much more complicated than leaning into the worst tropes, especially about queer women.
Yes. Yes. Yes, and there are always things that come with ice queens where it's like an age gap and a maturity gap and a power imbalance, and those things make me deeply uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Well, especially since we live our lives fighting those things every day. And yeah, I'm with you. You want to hear mine? My hot take?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, here's my hot take. Most people, most of the time, do want a happily ever after. And when you are saying that you don't want a happily ever after, it's because 1, you've been societally conditioned that there's a weakness in wanting to pursue joy, or 2, fundamentally, you don't believe you individually are worth a happily ever after.
Yes. You have conditioned yourself to believing you don't deserve it, and
Mhm.
therefore you think that it is not worthwhile.
Or real.
Yeah.
It's like a fantasy, but no, you can be happy. You can find joy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have
Yes.
to be in a romantic relationship.
Yes. And it's
We
not
write it
once. It's
no.
not you don't just find it and then your life ends. You know,
Right.
you keep going on these journeys, and specifically I wrote after all past that happily ever after point,
Absolutely.
and they got another happily ever after,
Right.
you
No,
know?
we're constantly finding our happily ever after
Yeah,
over and over again.
and it's different every time, and you're a different person every time,
Mhm.
and happily ever afters do not make you less interesting. Struggle does not make you interesting. You do not have to be miserable and sad all the time to be taken seriously.
The better
Specifically
story
as an artist,
oh,
don't get me
the
started
better
on that, but
story is Anna Karenina deciding not to step in front of the train.
Jesus,
That's the
seriously.
better story. You know what I mean?
Ser
Like, the better story is the awakening when she doesn't walk into the ocean. Like,
I was
that's
just
the
about to
better
say
story.
that. I was
It's the
just
better
about to say
story.
The
You know what I
Awakening.
mean?
King
It
Chopin, I'll
says
never
yeah,
forgive you.
God. I had to read that. I went to school at Tennessee. I had to read that book in every fucking class I was in. Because 'cause they're like, "Look at this Southern lady walking into the ocean." I'm like, "But what if, hear me out, she learned that, hey, guess what? This moment sucks, but that's because of the dude you're with fully sucks."
Yep. Yep.
And there are so
You know
many
what?
other dudes
I was the person in every literature class being like, you know what? Jane Eyre is happy in the end. And it's fine that she chose Rochester. Like, it's fine, you know? She is not less interesting because she chose happiness.
right.
Like,
Also, it just eats me up because that's the art we glorify says so much about our society, and all the
yes.
stuff it says about our society is the stuff about our society that I love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because 'cause I'm
I
like,
love this hot take.
yeah, well, it's just like, you can be happy. The better story is I looked into the darkness, and I almost let it consume me,
Mm,
and then I decided, I'll give it one more day.
mhm.
Because that next
Yes.
day, that's when the story happens. The story doesn't happen when you reach your breaking point. The story happens the day after you've reached your breaking point when you decide, "No, I'm going to find a way." That's the more interesting story. Bryce, thank you so much for joining me.
Megan, thank you so much for having me.
Where can people find you?
People can find me bryceoakley.com, has links to everything, has all the information. I'm most active on Instagram. I try to pretend that Facebook doesn't exist, and I refuse to use TikTok.
Hell yeah. Same. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.